Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. So today we introduce you to Sean Mundy, who is exhibiting in the Gallery B and C.
Yes.
Yes. So
With
he's
Hollow.
With
Hello.
Hollow. So welcome, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Sean, when was the first time you actually picked up a camera and started taking photos?
I think I first really got into photography in high school when I was like 16 or 17. My parents had just bought me this dopey little like digital Polaroid camera, and it was more so just to document my travels and stuff when I was going on trips and things. So it wasn't really serious, but so I've been shooting for about 7 or 8 years, but half of that was not really seriously making work. It was more just bringing my camera with me to parties and things like that.
Yeah.
And in about the last 4 years, I'd say I kind of got more serious about things.
Cool. And so when you were traveling, like what taking photos, doing parties, what was the inspiration then to be like, wow, I could maybe do this as a profession?
Yeah, I mean, it was something I kind of enjoyed doing, and I started taking photos for live shows and stuff for a little website called Meet You at the Show. I don't think it's up anymore, but basically we'd go around to live events and take photos, and I got to see a lot of bands for free and stuff. So it was
incentive.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. So I'd gotten to do like a few different kinds of photography, and I was always interested in like art photography, the kind of stuff I'm doing now. So about 4 years ago, I decided to try to take that more seriously than the other kinds, and since then, this is what I've made of it.
Cool. Well, jumping right into the exhibit that's currently on display here, what's the ideology and what's the sort of thought behind Hollow?
Well, basically, the series is just about kind of picking apart the social phenomenon that happens in different collectives, essentially, be it our own, like Western civilization or other ones, and just kind of taking things that have kind of been that are ingrained into it and kind of picking it apart and making dramatic, kind of almost surreal kind of images based off of it, especially with the group shots and things like this, where it's very dramatized, but it's based on very simple ideas, for example, like hive thought and hive mind kind of things like this.
And it all sort of stems from isolation.
Yeah, a little bit. It's ironic, especially today with the internet and how everyone is so connected. But you find there's studies about people in the Western world being more depressed than ever and feeling alone and things like this. So a lot of the work does come from kind of, especially the group shots. I'm trying to really pit like one against the many, or just kind of showing the contrast between the two. So that's why a lot of the shots will be one large group of people and then a single thing kind of thing. So yeah.
How's the group shot done technically?
The group shot, I would have loved to have gotten like 20 or 30 people actually together for the photos, but it wasn't really feasible, and I didn't really know that many people that would have been available and able to. So I basically got small groups of maybe 4 or 5 people per shot, and I would just get them to do the same thing over and over depending on the shot. Like in the photo Allude, it's the running photo. So I would just basically get people to, I brought like a bunch of, yeah, exactly. Just get a bunch of different, dark clothes. Exactly. And then in Photoshop later, I kind of pick the best takes and make it look like it was one image essentially.
And how long is that process?
It really depends.
One
of the photo like that. It really depends if I got it all like there, because there have been a few times where I get the photos and you don't really know it's good until you're done editing it. So you could. There have been a few photos. I think Moth's the one where the people are looking at the light. Yes. That one took me about 4 different times just because I wasn't getting the angle right, and it was hard to kind of match. It's basically just to mask out people's hair, and it's a very tricky thing to do in Photoshop sometimes. So it really depends on the image, but it went from like 1 week of editing to sometimes 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how often I'd have to reshoot.
Cool. Do you always plan because I saw on some features that you had, there's a lot of pre-prod.
Yeah, I typically like to kind of go into a photo with the idea in mind already. I don't typically work like based off of the locations or things like this. I like to try to do that sometimes, and there is actually an image here that kind of fit the mold of what I was talking about with Hollow, but it's actually a candid image, so that was kind of cool. It's the security guard in the it's by the Palais de Congrès. But yeah, I typically like to kind of plan everything and then try to recreate the original idea that I had in my mind to shoot. And that's where things get a bit annoying, because sometimes I get the image, but it's not exactly how I wanted it. So then I have to kind of just scrap it and go on again, try it again rather. So yeah.
Cool.
Let us know a little bit about the relationship you have with the 4 artists that are involved with Whispering Stills and how you guys came to be friends and where that all, because I know there's quite a little bit of a story.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, really, and this kind of thing between us kind of happens a lot with different communities on the internet, but for us in particular, we were all just kind of working on time-based projects around the same time and uploading to, I think, Flickr in particular, and Tumblr, but so I was doing a 52 weeks project, and you'd basically just be seeing a lot of younger people posting consecutively, like be it every day or every week, depending if they're doing a 365 project or 52 weeks, so we were all kind of just seeing each other's work from afar and kind of just like, and we were all inspired by each other's work too, so it's pretty cool, and we just kind of push each other up to kind of like do better than this kind of thing, almost like competitiveness, but in like in a good spirit. And a few times smaller meetups happen where maybe 2 or 3 people will get together, and I went to Maryland to meet up with about 4 or 5 photographers, and I just lived with them for a week. And then the person that hosted us there hosted a meetup that summer of like 40 people, and there was and that's where I met Brendan, who's in the show, and then I met Kyle, Brian, and David at other meetups later, and they basically were happening every 6 months or so in the United States for a good 2.5 years. So we would just kind of meet together in wherever someone could host us, because there were so many of us, so it would have to be like in someone's parents' farm or something like that. And so, yeah, exactly.
Well, you creative types.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really cool that you guys, you know, through isolation, you found art, and then through the internet, you found a community. But like, you know, most people on the internet find a community but don't actually get to meet in person.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
We created this community.
Yeah, exactly. It was, and we made like real bonds out of it too, which is cool. And obviously, you don't keep in touch with every single person because there's 40, and the odds of you having a direct, intimate relationship with them is a bit slim. But there are obviously people that you meet, you're like, I get you, you get me, kind of thing. We have a good bond together.
Why is creating art important?
For me, it's not even a matter of importance. It's just like I've always felt the need to. Right. It wasn't something that I consciously was like, I want to make art. It was just like when I wasn't taking photography seriously, I was working on music really, and just kind of playing guitar and playing in bands when I was younger. But then photography came along, and I kind of just like put that to the side and let photography be the main thing. But yeah, it was always just like a conscious thing where I was like, just make stuff. Yeah. And it wasn't so much about being an artist. It was more so just about creating content.
Right.
So all the previously we were talking about the social phenomenon. Is that going to be like your main topic or your main theme?
I don't. I mean, it's something that I'll definitely delve into in the future in other photos, because I think it's interesting enough to go about doing it in different ways every time. But I've done it a lot in the past, like for all these photos. So I might kind of steer clear of that. Exactly. Take a break from it and come back to it later with a fresh perspective, kind of thing. Be a bit more objective about it. But it's definitely something I'm gonna do in the future. But I'd rather try to focus on other things for the moment.
And how do you? What is your association with? Because there is that photos with the Bible and the animal.
I mean, it's the Bible. It's not made super obvious, but it's the title. The title is Oath. So yeah, but it's my relationship with like religion or Christianity. You mean, or
like part of the social phenomenon.
Okay, yeah. Well, that in photo in particular is more so just about the weird like latch that religion has had on the justice system, in the sense that we live in a secular society where it's very like known that you should separate the two institutions, but in certain cases there are still old ties, like swearing on a Bible, and you can have someone who's not a Christian swearing on a Bible, and that just makes literally no sense. And it's
bollocks.
It's just a weird old tradition. So something like that I just kind of wanted to make a more dramatic kind of rendition of like what would happen if someone lied while swearing on the Bible, kind of thing.
I think it happens probably a lot. Who are some of your favorite photographers that have inspired you?
When I was starting out, a lot of which is cool, a lot of the people in the show, like Brendan and Kyle, were some people that I would just look to for inspiration. But recently, this one American photographer, Nicholas Allen Cope, I believe that's his, Nicholas Allen Cope, and he does like really beautiful work, and it almost doesn't look like photography, it almost looks like he does sculpture, and he's just taking photos of it, but it's just it's really hard to describe, you'd have to look him up. But Patrina Hicks is also really good. She's a photographer who basically makes a lot of images that have themes of like mythology and things like this, but she's using a very commercial photography aesthetic. Okay. So it's like they're beautiful images, but they're kind of dealing with like older tropes and themes from mythology.
A good way to deliver
it's very contemporary. Exactly. It's beautiful, but it also is touching on very serious old like tropes and issues and things like that. So it's cool. And sorry, I have one more.
Yeah. Go for it, I like it.
Storm Thorgerson is someone I've always really liked. He was the guy that made all the Pink Floyd album art and a lot of other rock bands from the 70s and things like that. And it was really cool because he didn't have Photoshop at the time, or his team, so they would just do these like ridiculously elaborate things for one photo. And that kind of thing obviously doesn't happen so much anymore because digital manipulation is such a readily available thing that people won't like churn out like $20,000 for album art. Right. It's a bit ridiculous today, but it's really cool seeing the kind of work that people could make back then, which is a huge team, just with one idea in mind and with no digital alteration at all. It's very cool.
Where do you find your inspirational source? Where is it online mostly, or?
I just see a lot of art, and I just think, damn, that is really good, and the feeling that I get when I see things, and I'm like, that is like a gorgeous thing, and I'm so glad it exists. I kind of want to just make things like that, and if someone else thinks
as good,
exactly, if someone thinks that my work can, or if someone can feel the way I feel when I look at like beautiful art or listen to beautiful music, then that is a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
that's what I think is the great thing about art in general, and I don't really look at it from the community aspect is great, but I think dealing with people who like art but aren't artists, I think that's important for me especially.
Yeah, you put a lot of how do you say that? Intention.
Yeah, there's intention for sure.
Intention.
It happens, it's fine.
How would you describe your aesthetic of your work?
It's definitely dark, but it's also I specifically try to have very minimal compositions, and while it is dark, I typically don't try to make it too like macabre or things like that. It's acceptable. You won't look at it and be like, that's gross, like put that away kind of thing, because I get a lot of comparisons. With my older work was a bit like more darker and angstier, and as I get older, obviously I'm kind of veering away from that, but yeah, I think it's basically just very minimal compositions, a lot of grays, a lot of like very strict compositions. I typically, especially in the Hollow series, a lot of the images are very like I'll specifically cut the frame in half or have triangular compositions and things like that. So very like strict kind of work like that, and not too much clutter. I typically, since I can plan it all out, everything is placed with intention, kind of things like that.
How did you begin to work with Think Outside the Box?
I had spoken with Nicolas a few times on Facebook, and because they knew of my work, I believe, but they didn't realize I was a local, and so yeah.
Both of us, like, we
yeah,
didn't know.
This
it happens.
guy's so great.
You're
like,
from
oh,
Montreal?
Yeah, it happens. It happens sometimes where people will be like, "Oh shit, I didn't realize you're from Montreal as well." I'm from here. I'm like, "Yeah, I've been here." It says on all my interviews and like on every
Google
social.
me.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, Nicolas had reached out to me a few times and went for Benoit Paillet's exhibit. He told me to come and check it out, and I obviously wanted to because I really like Benoit's work. And so I came and met up with them, and they pitched the idea of a show. And I mentioned that I had this group of friends that I had made on the internet, basically, of other artists and photographers, and a lot of the people you guys actually knew about, and you were like, "Oh, that's sick. We should."
Yeah, like most of the artists of Whispering Still were all artists that we were like, "Oh my God, we should do a show."
Yeah, like you would shoot out names, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I could." That's
yeah,
like, I saw him like
this one show up in our office right there in the gallery, and he's like, "Oh, I know them all." So that's the story behind Whispering Still and Hollow. We actually
it's kind of like a weird group show, but not really at the same time.
So that's how it made sense to
exactly.
show here
It makes sense to do that for sure.
Yeah. What made you want to show here then? Obviously through the Outside the Box connection. And
it's my first solo show as well, and just having the opportunity to show my work at a venue like this that is not very like stern and old, kind of like an old guy who's not really interested in art, but more so about sales and things like that. I feel like a genuine vibe from this place, and I'm very proud to have my first show here because it just like it's a great space in terms of the people working here, in terms of the events you guys hold and things like that. It's more like a cultural hub than a gallery, and I like that a lot. And the fact that you can operate seamlessly between the two is very interesting, I think.
Cool. Well, we're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
What do you think about photography in Montreal?
There's so many really good photographers coming out of Montreal. A lot of them, I'm sure there are, but I haven't really found people that do very similar work to myself. I see a lot of commercial photography and portraiture, like really good portraiture coming out of Montreal. And especially on Instagram, you can find so many people that are just like killing it, doing things for like big brands, and they're from here and they're young too. So Montreal is definitely it's a hotbed for creativity in a lot of senses, be it photography or music or things like that.
Do you think we see photography enough?
Yeah, definitely with like Moi la photo and things like that. And there's so many free galleries out there that are specifically photography driven.
Yeah.
And they show photos more than paintings and things like that. But yeah, I think photography is definitely a big thing in Montreal for sure.
Yeah, it's becoming. We feel the excitement
Yeah,
from photography.
it's just such a readily easy. It's an easily like available medium, especially because I mean, painting is obviously still a huge thing, but photography is such an accessible medium that people become interested in, and 5 years later they can be like doing incredible works and having their photos shown at galleries and things like that. So,
do you think social media overall just like interested everybody more into photography, or?
I don't know if it made them more interested, but it made it more accessible. And so that's kind of how I started. I wasn't raised in the art world, like going to galleries and stuff. I only really started going to galleries in the last like 3-4 years maybe, when I first kind of started getting into photography as an art form more than as a documentation of a time and place. I forgot your question, sorry, what was it?
No, I was just I was asking if because of the social media, everybody has Instagram, everybody has Facebook.
It's definitely
Flickr.
more accessible, and I think just having it readily available to people like that. Like if you want, you can just look up popular photographers in X city, kind of thing. You can just find art more easily, and it can easily make more artists. It can make more art lovers. It can make more collectors. So it's definitely a good thing. Yeah. And I mean, people kind of get diluted a bit because of how easy it is now to kind of start up. Yeah. Whereas before, like if I didn't have the internet, like 10 years ago, if I was born 10 years ago, for example, I would have had to have gone through the gallery system. Right. Whereas now I can kind of just do my own thing and start working within the gallery system, which I think is like the best route to go, really.
That responds almost to my next question, which is how do you use social media yourself to promote yourself?
I've always just kind of put my work out there, and it was never really a conscious effort to try to get shows. I mean, this is my first solo show, and I've only really shown a few cafes in the past year. I was just really making art to put it out there. Like I said, it was more about creating content and less about like building an empire kind of thing. But over time, I'd love to for sure. And I'm working on music as well, so I hope to kind of like put out different projects. You're
back
and kind of just,
with the music now.
Yeah, I'm kind of back and forth between music and photography. So I'm just kind of I want to do a lot of different things basically. And photography is my first real venture into art. So I really hope to put out like music projects and put out photography and kind of start working in clothing and things like that. Even
wait, you're answering the question I was going to ask you. What's next?
Okay, yeah, a lot of things really, and most of them are still in baby stages still. Like I'm working on a project and instrumentals are done. I just kind of have to work on vocals and lyrics and things like that. But I basically just want to not branch out necessarily, because photography is definitely my main thing, but I want to give the other things the time of day to put the effort in and put the time in and make those projects become something that can hold a candle up to what I've done with photography. Right.
What would you respond, for example, if you had like a commercial request, like fashion or whatever?
To do a job for people like that? I would be totally into it. I've worked for a few small brands in the past, and I worked for my most recent one, I worked for a beer company from out west called Aurora. They're very good if you check them out. They're just a shameless plug. But
did you get free beer?
I did. But
amazing.
But they have a very cool philosophy that they're basically just trying to keep everything in Canada, and a lot of Canadian companies, once they get big enough, they obviously go to the United States, which is totally understandable, but they're trying to really keep the hub in Canada. That's cool. So yeah, it's a philosophy I can definitely get behind. But yeah, I mean, if a brand or a company if they like my aesthetic and they think that I can kind of match what they do, but in my own style, I'm totally, I'm not gonna, unless if it's something I'm not gonna do anything. It's the thing I have to kind of be. That's why I was interested in working with the beer company, because I liked their philosophy as a brand. Whereas if it was someone who like were offering to pay a lot of money, but I hated what they're doing, then I'd be a lot more hesitant to put my name on it, kind of thing.
Because I totally see Monolith as absolute vodka ad.
Well, if you got free product, McDonald's on the other hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything else that you wanted to sort of get across, or?
Just thank you for the opportunity to show my work here, really, and it's been an awesome experience, and I'm definitely going to be coming back here for your other shows and things like that, and sharing your events and things like that. So thank you so much for making this happen, and with the group show as well, a lot of the people.
Well, we want to thank you for helping us to put this together.
Yeah, for sure. It was just a little corresponding between them to just kind of get the files and stuff like that, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but they're all super appreciative as well, and a lot of them wanted to come but couldn't, obviously, because some of them are in Europe and some of them are in the West Coast, so they just can't fly out for one night and then go back, kind of thing. But yeah, so
thank God for Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. You can just send them a pic.
They were virtually there.
Yeah, essentially.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you.